All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a really exciting AMA, and it's to go through the roadmap. So we very recently released an updated version of the roadmap, which I would assume you've seen. If not, maybe somebody who has the permissions could post it in the discussion channel, because not everybody can post links. But it basically charts how we're going to get from here to Mainnet. And the structure of this is that we're going to go through some questions that I've put together just to get a bit more of an overview and to give Emanuele and Hein a bit of a chance to explain what some of the things in the roadmap mean, and to kind of go into it in a little bit more detail. And then we're going to get to community questions. So there's quite a lot of questions that were submitted by the community. And we've put together as many as possible. Some of them, particularly ones that were asking for more detailed breakdowns of the specific things that are going to be included in the roadmap. I think those will be better addressed in a different form of content, either in blog posts or maybe videos. So we won't quite get to all of the questions, but all of them have been noted. So just if you find that what you submitted isn't addressed today, it's because it probably isn't best served by this format. And then depending on how much time we have, we might have time to take questions that come in during this talk. I'm just not sure because there are quite a lot. So that is the format today. The speakers that I have with me probably need no introduction. We have co-founder and CEO Emanuele Francioni and core contributor and developer, and I would say fan favorite, Hein. So that's who is with us today. Guys, do you want to give any sort of introduction to yourself, or should we just get straight into the questions?
Okay. Well, I am Emanuele. For those of you that don't know me, I created Dusk together with some other people back in 2018. Had the idea in 2017, and and Dusk as a project is now planned to go on Mainnet March next year. Although there are several different milestones, deliverables, and activities that are now carefully and meticulously planned until that goal and milestone, which we will try our best to uphold with, because that's been committed. And yes, Hein, probably you want to say a couple of words about you, and then we can get straight through the AMA.
Yeah, so I'm Hein. I sometimes dabble around in the community. Sometimes I code, and sometimes I do other stuff at Dusk.
Okay, quite curious about the other stuff, but I guess we can have another AMA about it.
Hein after dark. All right, so to get started, would you guys be able to give us a bit of an overview of the roadmap and just a brief clarification of what the various deliverables or kind of different sections are? Because maybe not everybody quite knows the significance of Citadel or Piecrust, etc., etc. So if you could just give us a bit of an overview of what these pieces are, how they fit together. And also because I know that some of them are quite unusual or groundbreaking. So if there's anything else that you wanted to add that maybe people in the community aren't aware of. Oh, and someone is noisy.
Matthew.
So yeah, if we could have a bit of an overview and then just a bit of an understanding of what the various components are and how they all fit
together. All right, it's quite.
That's a big question.
That is really a big question, considering that the overall stack, the overall Dusk stack is actually quite complex. Because of that, probably the best way to tackle this question is to go and look at the different kind of milestones that are laid out according to the timeline and spend a couple of words about them. But in no way, shape, or form these particular deliverables they are exhaustive for the magnitude that our project has been tackling. I want to remind everybody about the fact that a lot has been already has been already done. A lot has been already released, and research took the time that it took. We have certain foundational libraries that have been laid out. So the milestones that are in front of us are actually the last missing pieces in order to get to a functional mainnet. And it is also quite important to realize that we are in the last mile. So I don't want to give a lecture on the entirety of Dusk stack, because this would be quite it would make for quite a lengthy AMA. But if we are going to take all the main items, then the thing that we are going to release in November are the Citadel SDK and Piecrust VM 2.0. So speaking about Citadel is a tool that is conducive to a self-sovereign identity. As a matter of fact, is a privacy-preserving way for a user to prove in zero knowledge, so in a privacy-preserving manner, that he or she or they have the right to access certain service. And by doing something like that, then Citadel, in fact, is a prerequisite or a base technology on top of which there are a lot of different exciting technologies that can be implemented, from KYC, so self-sovereign, privacy-preserving KYC solution, which is very important, especially in regulated applications, to digital identity, which is a different thing than KYC. You know, when a digital identity doesn't exactly pertain to a KYC, pertains to basically a certain asset that is linked to someone's identity. So say who you say you are according to whatever kind of proof you can provide of who you are. And Citadel also is essentially a permissionless restriction system. In fact, one thing that we are going to most likely use Citadel for is, in fact, to allow for provisioners to have their own separated networks to exchange consensus messages without a permission system. So a provisioner, so a node, if you will, that participates in the consensus, needs to stake an amount of Dusk. The stake provides a certain right to participate in the consensus, to be extracted to be a block generator, and in fact to receive an award in order to remain incentivized in order to run the entirety of the infrastructure. Because of that, provisioners, they need to exchange messages with each other. For instance, when there is a block generator that proposes a block to the other provisioners need to vote. And of course, if the network is open, then anybody could, flood the network with a lot of different messages. But by using Citadel, then all the different kind of provisioners can prove in zero knowledge that they are stakers in the network, and they can, in fact, send around consensus messages. Why is it important that this is privacy preserving? It is important because you never want to associate an IP address to a stake, so to a BLS key, or to a staking key, if you will, because in that way, by disassociating the two, by giving plausible deniability to every staker, then stakers can protect their identity and they can avoid being DOS'd, denial of service, which is a very common attack. So Citadel is, in fact, a tool, is a protocol upon which many different applications can be created. And then we have Piecrust VM, and it is this is I wouldn't say an evolution or an upgrade toward what was called Rusk VM, which is sort of the 1.0 virtual machine within Dusk, is an absolute overhaul. It is practically day and night compared to the old VM. It solves a lot of different problems, and it is extremely optimized to work specifically with our consensus. In what way? Well, very simply put, our consensus reaches finality after different kind of voting on different kind of blocks. And whenever there is a new block that gets voted on, then if there is a block that basically has got a higher priority because it belongs to a smaller iteration, then we need to be very quick in switching to that state. So one thing that Piecrust does is, in fact, being extremely efficient in avoiding executing transactions again. There are many other things that Piecrust essentially allows us to do, but apart from being, apart from the sheer performance improvement of an order of magnitude, if not more, in executed contracts in gas, for instance, Piecrust is a real it is a real achievement for us, and I'm very happy to have also during this AMA Ed, who's one of the main minds behind the VM, and I want to take this the occasion to thank him for being part of the organization and for having achieved, or not yet achieved, but being on the right track, let me put it that way, to deliver in November the Piecrust VM 2.0. In December, we are going to have two very, very important milestones, two very important deliverables, one being the web wallet, and I don't really think that it needs many introduction. It will be the one among the first privacy-preserving project, in fact, that will have a web wallet in which the different kind of zero-knowledge proofs, which in fact are very bulky because they require certain precompiled data that is generally called prover keys, and we are talking about hundreds of megabytes. Luckily, we got the idea to create descriptors for these keys, which allow us to create transaction directly in the browser if we want, or at least using a prover that can be a dedicated prover, or a prover that is put at service of the community from Dusk or anybody else that wants to contribute a prover to the network. So the web wallet is going to be very advanced. There are many different novelties that we are going to use in order to allow for the best possible user interface. And I know that Hein wants to say a couple of words about user interface and very good UX, and I will let him in a second. But the web wallet is going to integrate quite well with the capability for modularization of WebAssembly, which is one of these technologies that sit at the very core of the overall Dusk program. WebAssembly bytecode, for instance, are smart contracts. And the very good thing about WebAssembly is the fact that it is native for the browser. So it can be used directly from the browser, in the browser, can be uploaded on the browser, can run there. And this makes it so that smart contracts in Dusk and their user interface are a match made in heaven. And the node itself is the it is called node. It is not called provisioner because a provisioner is a very specific subset of a node. A provisioner, in fact, runs the consensus, is a stake, but there are many different. There are other different node types. For instance, the archival nodes that will, in fact, archive all the different events that are emitted by the smart contract. They will also keep the transaction history, and this kind of they will perform these kind of operations on behalf of the network, whereas the provisioner will be kept lightly, so that if anything happens to the archiver, then the provisioners are not affected, and the network can go on. But before moving forward with the other milestones, then probably Hein wants to interject here and say a couple of words about those items that I just have been speaking about.
Yeah, so the milestone that's probably most to the heart of people, of the community, is the web wallet, mainly because it's like the gateway to Dusk, right? There are a lot of layer ones that start with, that they have their own web wallet, their own wallet. The reason that they have their own wallet is in Ethereum, there was a lot of demand to build this sort of stuff. If you're a layer one, in between quotes, competing with Ethereum, you sort of have to have a reason to provide this sort of tooling yourself, right? So for us, it's essential to have this tooling. And it also gives us the opportunity to innovate beyond what MetaMask offers in terms of usability. And there are a lot of people that have opinions about the usability of MetaMask, and we can do a lot better there. And if we do, I think that's going to be a really important piece of our network. Like I said, it's the entrance way for people to Dusk. It's the first way that they can see that this stuff is actually working, right? So it's essential that we do this right.
Moving forward, about the roadmap itself, the next item is the economic protocol. Now, the economic protocol in Dusk is, I would say, a groundbreaking way to not only keep the community incentivized to participate in the network, but gives also the formidable tools for Web 2 services, so traditional businesses, to finally be convinced and migrate to a decentralized infrastructure. Now, one thing that has been asked many different times in my career is, why blockchain? What are we achieving with the blockchain? What is that used for? And we can talk for hours about what that means, but I never actually heard any convincing reasoning around it. And I want to offer one that the economic protocol unlocks. The why blockchain is because services or businesses, in fact, can offer certain particular services, certain particular products, digital products, to their audience, to their customers, by offloading their own operations to an infrastructure and a network that is not run by them, but is run by community. This means that if I have a business, for instance, and if I am offering my own services on top of my own infrastructure, then I incur costs for my infrastructure, which sometimes are staggering. This is certainly the case for security exchanges, which is one of these institutions that we focus on, but it is definitely true for a lot of different other infrastructures. By being able to offload the infrastructure to a blockchain, so to a network, to a protocol, and in fact running unstoppable services known as smart contracts, then the potential for these businesses, these traditional services, is enormous, especially in the context of financial applications. Now, the problem with that is the fact that it's not so simple. Why is it not so simple? Well, it's not so simple because blockchain and protocols, they all have to deal with gas, with the especially smart contract platform. They have to deal with the concept of gas. They have to deal with gas that normally is paid by the users directly to the platform. This hinders any kind of monetization capability for services. Normally, in a Web2 application, the user pays a service, and then the service pays the infrastructure. Whatever infrastructure is there, can be AWS, can be DigitalOcean, can be a broker, can be a back office, whatever it is. This is what happens normally. A user pays the service an amount that is known in advance, or is a subscription, and then the service pays its own supplier. This is how it works. Instead, on Web3, because of a series of different motivations, then it is absolutely difficult to allow a user or a service, in fact, to pay its own supplier, and for a user to be hidden the implementation detail about being on a blockchain. Now, with the economic protocol, Dusk aims to solve this problem. How? Well, by making smart contracts capable of paying for their own gas and charging users whatever kind of subscription, whatever kind of fee that they want. Hence, providing services with the same kind of monetization capability that they have on Web2 ecosystems. This is incredibly important for us because this is one of the things that we are asked over and over again. If I am migrating to Web3, if I am a service, and in fact I do want to offload my services on a community-run network, but I do want to retain the profits and the monetization capability of my service, how can I do that? On Ethereum or any other traditional smart contract platform, before the concept of account abstraction, there wasn't such a possibility. Now with account abstraction, then one could create a wallet or a smart contract wallet that does certain particular operation on behalf of somebody else, but still it is very clunky because there is no automated or native capability for smart contracts to take care about paying the platform out of their own pocket. We rectify this and we make possible for users just to pay or even do transaction for free if a service basically requires that. There are so many interesting implications about the economic protocol, and we are absolutely stoked and very excited to unveil it and to implement it before even Mainnet. Hein, do you want to say a couple of words about the economic protocol?
Yeah, the economic protocol is really interesting because this one of the big criticisms of Web3 is, of course, that financial people can't really do any total cost of ownership assessment on Web3, right? There's a huge variable component attached to this that is mostly put on the consumer. It would be like when you buy a product and you have the bills of material, and the bills of material, whatever, would be put on you as a user, and you would only pay the service, the part where they add their value. So this is very different from what you're used to in not even the Web2 world, just in normal commerce. And this economic protocol idea that's been built by Dusk, that rectifies that a bit. That makes it much more common to how we usually do business, in the real world, right? And this is going to be really valuable for us to also showcase to institutionals like, hey, you want to know the total cost of ownership? Here's an implementation of what you can do. And with some caveats, you can realize what you normally would want to have, in a service.
Indeed, another very interesting implication of the economic protocol is the fact that in the future, this is not something that we are going to do immediately for Mainnet, because it would complicate a little bit our roadmap, and we decided to, just to launch as soon as feasible. But one implication would be that, for instance, users could pay with stablecoin, would pay with a digital euro or digital dollar for getting some services, and then that this will be exactly like a Web2 application. Of course, under the hood, the smart contracts will still need to pay for Dusk for gas, so the utility of Dusk is preserved. Not only that, the capability of creating infrastructure and to enhance the overall infrastructure and decentralization of Dusk will be monetizable, because we will also, together with the economic protocol, we are also going to launch what we call the service provider template that will allow for people that will want to contribute to the infrastructure to have their own service and monetize this service. Say, for instance, that there is one of you, a developer or whoever, that has got a better prover or better hardware, and therefore proving any kind of transaction or the creation of any kind of transaction is indeed faster. They could, in fact, use the service provider template that we will provide, and charge community members to use their own prover, which is superior to any other prover that is found on Dusk network, and then monetize from there. This way, there are also other things that can be done. For instance, to have an explorer which is completely custom and provides some more services, and that too can be monetized directly without the need of any other token, which is also another interesting capability that is introduced by the economic protocol.
Yeah, enshrining it in the protocol like this, I don't think I don't know of that many blockchains that even slightly attempt something similar. And the advantage of having this enshrined this early on is, of course, that you don't have to work around all sorts of limitations that exist once you have a running state, which is really nice. The funny thing, what you mentioned about the Blog Explorer and monetizing that, if you talk about monetizing history, then you sort of with fast sync-ups, if that's possible, right? You sort of prevent the need for state rent because you inverse the problem.
Indeed. Fast sync-up, for those of you that are not familiar with the concept, is something unique to Dusk, and it is a very interesting side effect of using Piecrust VM 2.0. In fact, we structure the data in pages of memory pages that we also keep track in our state. And because of that, then a node that wants to sync up with the network, it doesn't matter how many, what is the block height, how many blocks since Genesis are there, then the only thing that needs to do is to request, is to have the latest block, or block height -1, and then ask all the nodes that are available to supply their own memory pages, and such a node can verify that the memory pages are in fact correct. And because of that, then we foresee that we can create checkpoints and we can sync up really, really, really fast, which is a first for a privacy-preserving network. There are projects like Celestia, for instance, that try to do the same thing using data availability, and because of our method, then we are way faster than they are, and we do not require such bigger and bloated blocks using erasure code and other things in order to catch up. Sampling, yes, indeed.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, it's not that big, when you start, right? But once your state starts to grow and it grows at a rapid pace, then having this feature is massive. It's really massive, even for smaller clients, like for light clients.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It can be you can be 5 years down the line, having a blockchain that reaches 1 billion block, 5 billion block. It doesn't matter. It will always take the same amount of time to sync up for a new node, and this time is going to be very fast. So it's constant and is not as massive.
Yeah, Solana has this with by dumping the state after a year, right, and making it historical. But we wouldn't need this 1 year of history in that case. So it's really massive.
Indeed, we could do it after a bunch of epochs, once per couple of weeks time, for instance. All right. The last item on the roadmap is the ERC20 one-way bridge. Hein, please elaborate on that. You are probably more up to speed than me about it.
Yeah, so the ERC20 one-way bridge is basically the migration of the Dusk on ERC20 on the Ethereum chain and on the Binance Smart Chain chain to a native chain. This is a one-way bridge for security reasons. And the concept of this is, of course, that once we launch, that everyone can migrate over their Dusk that they have on the other chains and use it on the Dusk chain natively.
Of course, the bridge will remain in service for the time being, so there is absolutely no time limit for anyone to migrate their ERC20 Dusk to the native Dusk. Although it might actually be profitable to do so, because with an amount of Dusk, then you can stake and you can participate in the collective incentive that put the network in security. Whereas with the ERC20, you cannot really do that. You cannot really use Dusk for much.
There's still a lot of open questions around the bridge. Anyway, we're looking at ways to do this, or the best way to do this, and there are a lot of trade-offs to make here. And I think that a lot of the tokens will also be migrated over through exchanges, which in itself is a very involved human process, not so much a technical one.
Yeah, indeed. All right, with that out of the way, I hope that we provided enough, information and hopefully at the right level about the upcoming milestones.
There are a couple of timelines that might be worth highlighting.
Please.
Like, for instance, the auditing feedback cycle, which is, auditing the protocol itself, and it's set for November to up to March. In essence, we already have internal audits going on. There's work being done on auditing Phoenix, auditing
Citadel, auditing succinct attestation consensus, auditing
consensus,
and also auditing Zedger. One thing that probably people have been looking at and probably asking themselves is, where is Zedger within this mainnet roadmap? Well, Zedger is coming immediately after the roadmap, but this doesn't mean that we are not taking Zedger into consideration. Not from a requirement perspective, and not from a prototypical perspective, because we need to make absolutely sure that we can upgrade the protocol without impacting operation at any time. This is one of the big items, in fact. It's not really made explicit. Probably people have seen upgradability as one of these items, but this is one of the big ones. So the auditability of Dusk network is not only limited, sorry, it's not only limited to those milestones and those checkpoints and products, technology that we're going to put out there, but it is comprehensive of the entirety of the protocol, including also the security token issuance, DLT, and Zedger in particular, which is in fact probably the most important part of our journey, considering that we are doing all this for a reason, and the reason is to provide a decentralized alternative to regulated finance, which Zedger implements, in fact.
Yeah, it's a gross concern cutting. And we also have the systematic stress test, which is the testing of the protocol as some...
Systemic, yeah. It's not systematic.
Oh, it's not systematic.
We are going to systematically do systemic stress tests. That's for sure.
Yes.
Jade, back to you.
Cool. Thank you, guys. I think that was a really good introduction for everybody to sort of understand what the components are. And what I heard was basically we've actually thought this through to create something that will be applicable in the real world and not just within the blockchain kind of space. I suppose to skip ahead a little bit, just to give people an understanding, and you kind of touched on this, but what will be possible when the mainnet is released? What will people be able to do, and maybe what will be coming? And then we'll get to the community's questions, just to give a bit of a sense of what mainnet actually means.
Mainnet is, in fact, the commencing of most of our plans, but not all of them. By pushing out mainnet, basically the entirety of the protocol will be deemed, first of all, secure enough, performant enough, but most importantly, prepared to all sorts of different upgrades that we are going to apply immediately after. Now, one of the main problems with any kind of blockchain being, a censorship-resistant ledger is how to perform upgrades. We have been thinking long and hard about that, and the capability of doing upgrades seamlessly without having to resort to, a lot of different other mechanisms that at the moment are the only ones that exist, like forking, for instance. This is one of the biggest property that we intend to achieve together with Dusk. The list of different features that are going to ship with mainnet basically will make, in fact, everybody enabled to do smart contracts in quite an easy way, confidential smart contract at that, and most importantly, it will prepare for the issuance of regulated assets. Not only issuance of regulated assets, in fact, it will prepare Dusk to become an immediate contender to a lot of different other services that at the moment are hindering the development of different entities in the space, primarily exchanges, security exchanges. By acting as a CSD, for instance, or acting as a clearinghouse for regulated transaction, or a settlement layer, or using Citadel for KYC, or doing off-ramping by using the economic protocol, and then Dusk can replace practically 70% of, if not more, of all the different kind of services and brokers that security exchanges nowadays are using in order to keep in business. This is one of the differences between a security exchange and a crypto exchange. I mean, if you think about Binance makes so much more money than any other security exchanges out there. Why is that? Well, because Binance uses all the different kind of blockchains and ledgers, crypto ledgers, in fact, as primary market, and it just focuses on its own core business. It does not need to pay for CSD. It does not need to pay for clearinghouses. It does not need to pay for settlement platform. It does not need an on-ramping system apart from the normal fiat system. But mostly it is going to be just stablecoin and other kind of digital assets. This is what we want to provide. So to answer your question more precisely, then what you can do is basically run the infrastructure where all these different kind of components are currently being prepared and will be shipped and delivered immediately after. You will be able to stake. You will be able to have your own service provider contribute to the infrastructure. You will be able to use Dusk and to transfer Dusk. You will be able to, all the different kind of developers will also be able to start tinkering with Dusk as a smart contract platform. Immediately after Mainnet, there is going to be time to prepare all the different various development tools to make it possible for third-party developers to upload smart contracts. But most importantly, it is going to be the time in which we can start planning for our security related ambitions and to roll out all those different assets that are going to be on Dusk network, regulated assets, in fact, that our users will be able to own directly on their own wallet.
Sorry to interject, but that is a very interesting article to be written about that topic, by the way, the cost savings that some party like Binance has because of using DLTs as their primary market. Like the amount of people involved there, the people earning money on it, it's insane. And I don't think it's really clear to the majority of people who follow us how big of a difference it can make.
Yes, indeed. I mean, Binance uses any kind of chain out there for free for their, or their digital asset depository. They can use any kind of smart contract platform, the Ethereum or whatever else, as a clearinghouse, because a smart contract or a blockchain, a DLT, is in fact a clearinghouse in and by itself. And the transaction finality, for instance, is the transaction settlement platform that everybody's talking about. When we're talking about, for instance, layer 2s on Ethereum, then one thing to be said is the fact that layer 2s are absolutely ill-prepared to offer any kind of alternative for regulated finance. The reason for this is because basically the transaction finality depends on the layer 1, and they settle on layer 1 every half an hour, 1 hour, whereas basically this requires to be, transaction required to be settled as soon as possible. But in the normal world, transaction settlement happens in 2 days. So there is a little bit to be gained efficiency-wise by using a DLT.
Yeah, I think that L2s in that sense have problems with security more so than with finality, even though the finality itself can, in ideal circumstances, be somewhere around 10 minutes or so. Depends on the type, of course, but
yeah, well, that is for another AMA, I guess.
Yeah.
Jay,
like
did I?
Yes, you did. I think that's a good answer. And I was going to say that sounds like Hein has volunteered to write a piece on this. So thank you, Hein.
Oh, did I? Oh.
All right, to get to the community's questions. Some of these are very, very precise. Some of them are a little bit broader. But the first question that I've got here is, how is the documentation progressing? This seems to be a prerequisite for the audits, if I understand correctly. Will the docs be made public? Okay, this is a 3-part question. So how is the documentation progressing? And is this a prerequisite for the audit? And will that be made public before or after the audit?
Yes, so the documentation is progressing very well, I would say. It is absolutely a prerequisite for any kind of audit. Now, for what concerns documentation, when we're talking about documentation, there are two different kind of documentations that we're working on, and we are prioritizing one in respect to the others. So there is the formal documentation and the informal documentation. The formal documentation not only describes our protocol, but also describes it includes also proof, mathematical proof, to upend the security parameters of these protocols. This formal documentation is done in the form of different kind of white papers that we are talking about and that we are describing, the most foundational one being the Phoenix white paper, but there are others like the protocol white paper, which includes also a detailed outline of the consensus and how the different kind of components within Dusk talk to each other. The Citadel white paper, which is also probably at the second or third revision, if memory serves. The Zedger specifications, which right now are being finalized, and the next step is about proving their security. And the tokenomics and economic protocol that, in fact, have been outlined in an informal way, but they will need to be formalized. And this is definitely one of the priorities that the research team has for the upcoming time. Together with that, there is an informal documentation that also needs to be prepared. And this informal documentation assumes different kind of formats depending on what we're talking about. If we're talking about libraries, for instance, our cryptographic libraries need to be very well documented because they need to follow the formal specification of the cryptographic novelties and technologies that we are using. Whereas for integration pieces and boilerplates, it suffices to have documentation done directly on the code or in the form of readmes on GitHub or on our wiki page.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is about Citadel. It says, curious about the Citadel SDK and what can be done when it's released. The web wallet is released a month later. Will that include functionality for Citadel? Or will it make no difference to the software guys who can mess with the SDK without the wallet?
So I provided a little bit of insight at the very beginning about Citadel SDK. So essentially, it is not only the SDK because Citadel intertwines quite deeply together with the protocol. So in order to have any kind of license proven in zero knowledge, then there needs to be a transaction that is broadcasted depending on what you need to prove. Very stupid example, being able to prove that you're a provisioner and you have the right to join the dedicated network of the provisioners. In order to do that, then the transaction that will allow for a provisioner to make such a proof is going to be a transaction, is going to be essentially a staking transaction. Now, if we are talking about KYC, say, for instance, that at some point we want to exclude certain parties to be provisioners, for instance, then, and this, of course, is not something that Dusk can unilaterally decide. It is basically for, to subject to a vote or whatever. But in any case, in this hypothetical example, then the staking transaction must be coadjuvated by sort of proof of exclusion based on some kind of certificate that somebody is not from a blacklisted country, like North Korea, for instance. This is something that will be possible only if the Citadel SDK will be available and integratable by any kind of smart contract. This is also going to be quite important in our in the integration of Dusk with any kind of license provider. People know that we did a small investment into Outdid some time ago. They are working to prove or to be able to prove all sorts of different statements related to one's passport. So Citadel would probably exploit, or rather a service including Outdid and Citadel would probably exploit the capability of proving anything on a passport in order to create certificates that Citadel can use in providing access to any functionality that so requires. Initially, on Mainnet, we are not going to restrict things based on Citadel. There is not going to be a license providing, but it is very important to have the technology ready because you never know what kind of changes we are going to see in MICA, for example, and we need to stay compliant in case these changes will require some kind of blacklisting, for instance, of different nodes, which at the moment is not the case. So we are not going to implement it.
Great. The next question, I would say you've answered already, but I'll ask it in case there's anything else you wanted to add. Is the XSC standard and Zedger included somewhere or implemented at a later stage? You said already it's coming sort of straight after, so should we sort of...
Yes.
This one answered, or is there more?
Well, just to reiterate very, very briefly, Zedger and XSC, they are sort of two different sides of the same coin, right? And we are working on them right now because we need to make sure that when Mainnet is there up and running, we can upgrade. At the moment, Zedger is not ready, so we don't want to include them in the plan because otherwise this would have meant going on Mainnet much farther. But we had to. We are including, in fact, some prototype in order to prove the fact that the entire network can upgrade to include Zedger at the second moment without any disruption for the network itself.
Great, thank you. This one I think is a little bit controversial, so I'm a little bit nervous.
Oh, it's for Hein.
Normally we would need Sabine here because she keeps everybody in check with what we can and can't say. But someone has asked, can we get more information on the pilots? Will they go live and be announced with Mainnet since most information is under an NDA? Can we get a number on how many pilots are active? What can we say about pilots? Because, a lot of it is NDAs. We can't say too much.
Well, I can give the answer. No comment.
Excellent. Thank you, Hein.
So it is absolutely important to understand that we're not at the liberty to we're not in the liberty to actually unilaterally announce anything. I can, however, speak about things that we have already committed to, and which are probably among the most important for our strategic development, which is the DLTR. So the exemption, the MTF exemption for the use of all different kind of classic finance services that in fact are getting completely obsoleted by the use of DLT. So we are well on our way to acquire this exemption directly from the regulators on behalf of an MTF. This MTF is MPEX. This will give us the possibility of going to hook other MTFs, other security exchanges, and in fact to become the interoperable network for all the different kind of exchanges. So these are the kind of pilots or the kind of applications and partnerships that we are seeking. I know that a lot of people expect us to have partnerships with this or that issuer and piloting with this or that issuer, however big these issuers are. This is absolutely the case, but these are not strategic. These kind of pilots are not strategic. Why? Because we don't care about single issuers. We don't care about, for instance, without naming names or being very generic or anything, but about an ETF provider, or about a real estate provider, or about a bond provider and primary market. We don't care about those. We care about essentially just hooking different kind of security exchanges and crowdfunding platform. What we want are pipelines, not single issuers. We want pipelines that will secure a continuous flow of different kind of assets. And we want for these assets to be quite easily pluggable on MTF to provide secondary market to these assets. If you, again, getting back to the parallel between crypto exchanges and security exchanges, nobody is actually, asking Binance or any kind of DLT about primary. It is enough basically to have a smart contract and you have a token, and this token will or will not reach Binance according, to Binance wheel or any kind of crypto exchanges. Same thing for what concerns Dusk. Only there is going to be a DLT. This DLT is Dusk, and it is going to be seeking the DLTR, which is not a pilot, is a real program that we are seeking together with our partners Ampex, in order to immediately provide secondary market to all sort of different kind of pipeline of assets. Now, these assets at the moment are also provided by Ampex, because guess what? Ampex is, like all other security exchanges, is not making its own money from the secondary market, because the secondary market is very expensive due to all these brokers, CSD, clearinghouses, and etc. So they are making their money from primary. They go around and check for a lot of different assets here in the Benelux to issue on their own platform. Now, if they do, then essentially due to our exemption and to our partnership, they will end up on Dusk immediately. And you as a user will be able to purchase those, will be able to exchange those. If somebody else, like a crowdfunding platform, essentially seeks a secondary market exit, then in order to get to the secondary market, then they can go knock at an Ampex door and make agreements with them, or they can simply basically just use and adopt Dusk for free. And their assets are going to end up on the secondary or be pluggable to the secondary market. Like Binance, that Binance decides what kind of digital assets are going to be traded or not on their platform. So Ampex will retain that right. But in the end, it's going to cost a fraction for any kind of asset to end up on Ampex. This is why Ampex is so important. And this is also why, partnership, pilots, and this kind of stuff are incredibly important, have been incredibly important for us to basically make the issuance right. But in the end, it's not how we are breaking through the entirety of the financial tissue. Together with that, also, it needs to be said that Ampex is not the only MTF that we are seeking. But of course, there is one way to devour a whale, which is one bite at a time.
Yeah, this whole DLTR topic probably deserves a space on its own, because it's such a USP for Dusk. If we get this, nobody will be able to compete from the existing markets against a railway that provides this service.
Yeah, the important piece here is the fact that it is possible to invoke the DLTR exemption only since this year, and we have been among the first to apply. The interesting thing is that you cannot apply by yourself as a DLT. you need to have an MTF that vouch for you and actually applies. And then you, as a DLT, can be used. So this is incredibly important. And this is the coming together of the strategy that we always had. And this is also the reason why we approached Ampex and why Ampex is such a big player for us. But not the only one. Not the only one.
I hope that answers the question without giving away too much information. And also, I think emphasizes the scale of what is being worked on.
Hopefully.
We're moving on to a bit of a sort of wallet section. And I'm not 100% sure what this question means, but it says, what wallet, if any, will support native Dusk? So I'm not sure if that's talking about, like, will we be integrated with things like MetaMask? Or, yeah, that's what I imagine it's asking.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
interpret that.
Hein, please go.
Yeah, I can go quickly through this. So, wallet support can mean multiple things, right? This can mean, for instance, software wallets like MetaMask, which have an Ethereum-based API, which is not compatible with ours. So that's not going to happen. There are software wallets that are more generic. We could theoretically integrate with those. Hardware wallets is a bit of a problem because most hardware wallets don't support the sort of cryptographic curves we have. But you can implement them in software. So this sort of stuff will take some time for us to develop. In the end, we will have our own wallet, and people can use that as an example to build upon. And over time, more and more people will integrate like more generic wallets.
Great. And related to that, Hein, maybe this is another one for you. Will the wallet estimate the gas price in the way MetaMask does to give a slick user experience? Could you maybe share a little bit what you guys have been working on for the UX for the wallet?
This can be done. You can run an instance of our virtual machine and run code against it and then get an estimate of how many gas points this costs. So this is doable.
Interestingly, as soon as the economic protocol is up and running, then one thing that smart contracts can do is to charge users directly a fee if they want to do so, and the gas cost is going to be up directly to the smart contract. So hopefully this is not going to be a problem for much longer. There is not going to be an estimation of gas because users don't care about gas. They want to access service, and this service need to provide certainty of payment, certainty of price at least. And even better if the price is in a current, fiat value that can be pegged to a stable coin. So if you want to purchase a bond on Dusk wallet, then you know that bond costs, X for a certain percentile for a certain percentile. You can have a small transaction fee that you are paying, which is going to be much lower than the normal transaction fee that you use on other security exchanges. Let's say 0.001%, and then that's it. That's actually what you pay. And then the smart contract itself, which belongs to the institution selling the bond, or the MTF essentially selling the bond through Dusk, then that will settle the gas on the Dusk platform in a transparent way. Of course, this is up to the smart contract. For some smart contracts, it might actually make sense to have gas. For some other, it doesn't. But I feel that the UX is much better served by having certainty of price rather than estimation of gas. So I would, in fact, advise smart contract developer to take this into consideration when they are developing their own services.
I like how the answer to most of these questions is yes and then something even better. The next question is about a faucet. One thing I'm currently hoping for is a faucet and a testnet. Perhaps the economic protocol in conjunction with upgradability features will make faucets and testnets obsolete.
Oh, yeah, I think I answered this question before, but yeah, well, in the chats. But the thing is, this sort of suggests that we will upgrade our test nets, at least the ones we currently have before mainnet. And the problem is, you lock yourself into whatever changes you make in between, and that's a bad idea before launch. So that's not a great thing. Having a more stable testnet, we currently have pretty stable testnets, but we're doing internal testing on them still. But I'm expecting that we will at some point have a longer running stable testnet again with a faucet. I don't think we're that far off, actually.
Sounds good. Moving to the node, it says proof of stake. I understand staking on Dusk will be a little different, no delegation. Is that still the direction?
Yes.
I'm not a fan. Yes, good. That's the right answer.
Yes, and.
Of course, an and. There's always an and with you.
No, it's a resounding yes.
It's better for decentralization as well to not facilitate this or enshrine it into the protocol itself. I mean, you have it on Ethereum outside of the protocol, right? And this just leads to more decentralization and quicker centralization and quicker centralization. I think if you look at like the spectrum of centralized chains to decentralized one, I think that it's fair to say that we at Dusk err more on the side of decentralization to the point as that Ethereum promises. So.
Well, if I may add a couple of words about something that hasn't been circulated, and it is the last point of our consensus that is still under consideration. Not sure if we are going to go that direction or not, but I have been thinking about implementing a different kind of mechanism for reward, which completely reverses the concept of probability of getting rewarded and the reward itself.
Are you about to drop some serious alpha on us? Is that what's happening?
Yes, absolutely. This is, but it is not. I mean, we didn't really run security or anything, and it is, like I said, it is the last. It is the last point. If it makes sense, it's incredibly easy to implement, and we will do so. Otherwise, we will just let it go. So essentially, what I have been thinking is, at the moment, if you have a stake, then the block generator gets extracted with higher probability depending on the stake you have. So if you have a very big stake, then you are extracted as a block generator much more often compared to the other block generators. So if you stake very little, then you have lesser probability to be extracted and lesser probability to gain a reward. Now, the reward is always the same, right? So it's the coin base. But if we reverse this, right? So say, for instance, that we, instead of keeping constant the coin base, we make the coin base related or dependent on the stake of a maximum stake for an epoch, and pay pro rata all the other stakers, then everybody has, in fact, the same probability of being picked up, then essentially you achieve 1 point. It is completely a disincentivized aggregation of stake. Say, for instance, that I have 1 million Dusk in stake and Hein has got 100,000 Dusk in stake, right? So probabilistically speaking, right now I would be extracted with 10 times more than him, and I would get the same kind of reward for each round. Now, what if Hein and myself, we have the same probability of getting extracted, and we will get extracted the same amount of time within an epoch, but within the same epoch, I actually earn 10 times more than what Hein is earning. In that way, first of all, it is disincentivized for me to aggregate with another stake, because we basically will get paid pro rata anyways, and we will just be extracted less time. not only that, it is also going to be more costly for me because, I am in fact just running one stake instead of two. At the same time, Sybil resistance it is still achieved because if I break down my own stake into many different stakes, then my reward will be exactly the same. Only I will have to have many different kind of provisions. Hence, I will have more costs. So aggregation is disincentivized, and also Sybil is disincentivized the same way. This is basically the direction that we have been thinking. Of course, we need to run a little bit of security assessment to understand basically what kind of impact this would have on our token emission. But to be honest, I think from an intuition perspective, I think that this is pretty sound. So Federico, of course, is the master of consensus at the moment. He's formalizing succinct attestation. This will not change anything from an implementation perspective because we will just have a sortition that will act according to a normal distribution. So the change is probably 5 minutes, so it's not going to impact the roadmap whether we implement this or not, but the security of this needs to be carefully assessed. But yes, this is my alpha drop for today.
That sounds very exciting.
Actually, I'm interested to know what Hein thinks about this because I don't think that he actually heard this before.
No, is this the future exclusion?
No, it's not. It's not the future.
Okay.
Not the future.
Yeah.
Exclusion proof.
This okay. Oh no, yeah.
The future exclusion proof basically says if inside of a round you are going to be a block generator in the future, then you shouldn't vote right now because you are incentivized to withhold the vote, so to get to your block. So this is the future vote exclusion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I always find these sort of things a bit dangerous, because I think the idea itself sounds really good, but we'll have to see what it means for the implementation, right?
But implementation-wise, we already assessed it, so it's not going to be that much. The thing is security, so the security of this needs to be carefully assessed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was a very measured response, Hein. Thank you.
No, but this sort of stuff with consensus, you always have to be a bit measured. With add-on stuff, you can be a bit more wild, I guess.
And the final question that I have that was pre-submitted is about slashing. So someone says, I know what slashing is, but it can be done a million ways. What ideas are floating around? Personally, I don't like slashing that results in permanent loss, like the idea of locking up the slash stake, yet returning it in the far future, but the game theory has to work, I guess. What is the thinking? So how are we thinking about slashing?
Yeah, is this a question from Sepia?
No, this is a question for me, because I have been thinking about slashing quite a lot. And I know that Sepia will agree with me, because otherwise he's fired. So essentially slashing is something that initially we wanted to use in order to incentivize both, right? But this is not exactly, and there are some ways that this is implemented on another chain, like for instance on Ethereum. In the end, we resolved to apply slashing only on some blatant cases. And these blatant cases are the following. So there are two slashable offenses. One is for a block generator that will propagate for the same iteration 2 different blocks. And another is for a provisioner that for the same step will provide 2 different votes. The 2 different votes essentially being a vote or nil. These 2 are the only slashable offenses that we are going to implement. The reason is that if you are going to create 2 different blocks and having the consensus or the different provisions vote for the different blocks and voting for the same thing twice, or twice and with two different votes, then essentially you are dumb as fuck and you deserve to be slashed. That's practically what this is. How are you dumb? Well, and thank you, Discord, for not punishing me for using potty language. This is our Discord. Haha, I can say whatever I want. So, why are you dumb? Well, basically because everybody is going to detect this kind of attack, and it is very simple to detect. So this is probably conducive to a deeper problem, which is the fact that you are running a buggy provisioner. And if you are running a buggy block generator or a buggy provisioner voting, then essentially you might act as a Byzantine adversary inside of the network. And the Byzantine adversary is something that the consensus is designed to to work in presence of. In slashing is something that we are going to do probably in a way that will not eliminate the stake, but so that the stake will not have an effect from a certain epoch afterwards. So the stake will probably be marked as inactive, and that provision is going to be excluded from voting operation until something happens. This something can be a version upgrade, can be unstaking and restaking, these kind of things. We will not be implementing abstinence penalty because we don't need them. And the consensus, in fact, I think it is secure enough and converging fast enough to final blocks to make any kind of abstinence definitely a red herring, I would say. This is further strengthened by the fact that the provisioners will have their own network. So only provisioners will be exchanging consensus messages, which means that it's going to be, if somebody abstain, is only because he wants to abstain or because he needs to abstain, and that's not the time or the kind of slashable offenses. Any kind of a countermeasure there has been thoroughly discussed, analyzed, and we found that it would have complicated the code to a point that it wasn't really worth it.
Great. Thank you. That is all of the questions that I had pre-prepared. I think there are a couple that have come in. So guys, do you have time to answer any more questions, or should we start wrapping this up? There's just two that I have in addition to what we've done already. But
Go for it.
Okay. Someone says the recent blocks on testnet devnet are 7 days old. What's cooking?
Not blocks. No, I think that Sapia broke the testnet. We have another network running as well, but we'll reboot the testnet as soon as it's done.
So nothing's cooking in particular that is worth sharing right now,
aside
from all the things that have just been shared.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much to add. Like, I know that there is other testnets as well running that we don't have public. This one will be reset in due time. There are some fixes that I think, Ed is here. I think he already merged it. So
okay,
I think it's just a matter of time.
And another question is, once we're on mainnet, the BEP2 tokens will be able to be bridged to native ones. This is in regards to Binance and our native tokens. I think you guys already answered this about the bridge.
Yeah, we did. It will be bridged as well.
Okay, cool. I mean, that is all the questions that we seem to have. Guys, if you have any questions, please, you can put them in the questions thread. And I guess while we just wait to see if anybody has any questions, is there anything else that you guys want to add that, maybe we haven't covered yet, but that you think is important when it comes to discussing the roadmap?
You can also unmute that.
Yeah,
say the question if you want.
To unmute and ask in person. I had a question that I skipped over for time, but just while we're waiting to see if anybody wants to ask anything else. Was there anything in particular that had to be cut out of the roadmap? Anything that, as obviously this was like a test in prioritization. Was there anything like, oh, I don't want to, but I have to?
I think actually the dev tools for third-party smart contracts, that was the one that we decided to cut out. And the reason for it is that although basically the support for smart contracts is going to be there, the dev tools are something that most likely would have taken a long time, and probably they are not. We can do things. We can do things in steps. In the end, there is something to be learned from Ethereum, which is that if they, were looking to have the best tools ever and roll-ups and scalability and all that stuff before going to mainnet, then they would probably still be on DevNet. And so they sort of YOLO'd their own mainnet. It was clunky, Solidity is crap, the EVM is a nightmare, but it is out there, and they are improving it step by step. So in the economy of launching a definite protocol, then in the end we decided to prioritize these kind of tools, which are very important, but to a later stage. This will also give us this also gave us some focus, because we were focusing more on the upgradability of the entirety of the network rather than trying to make it extra simple for developers to deploy their own smart contracts. And by doing so, then we take out really a foundational part of the entirety of the network, while still keeping an eye on things that need to be supported. So all the different kind of third-party smart contracts, like I said, and also the Ledger, they have been already included in the mainnet program, but we are going to launch the actual applications only later on. The most important thing is that the support is there, and we can do so at a moment's notice.
That gives me a question that I have not pre-prepared or written down for you guys to read in advance. So what you were saying about Ethereum has launched and then kind of worked on things as they went along, and there's something to be said for that. Something else that kind of occurred to me as you guys were speaking is almost like the time that Dusk and everybody has had to see what works in blockchain and what doesn't, and maybe what's missing, that account abstraction is clunky and stuff like that. How different would the mainnet have looked if it was launched a few years ago? And would you say that it's a better mainnet?
Completely different. We would have gone on mainnet with proof of blind bid, because we were under the assumption that we needed to provide privacy preserving stake, which is incredibly difficult to do. And sorry, Vlad, I am going to mute you because you are hissing. Okay. So so we would have gone with proof of blind bid, which is incredibly difficult to do, and not necessary at all if you have the capability of spending public output privately, right? We would have gone with Canonical as a serialization protocol. We would have used microkelvin instead of having memory snapshots. We would have used a lot of different tools that we were developing, And then after having developed, then we realized, especially after having launched testnet, we realized that we not only didn't need them, but they were harmful for the overall economy of the network. So yes, the network would have been very, very different. Another thing that would have been different is the fact that we wouldn't have our plans for the economic protocol. So we would have relied on the normal gas or user pays gas kind of scenario. Right now we have the capability, other capabilities, like for instance, what we have planned. We are planning to implement them for Mainnet, but we have planned other capabilities, like for instance, user pays a fee or nothing, and smart contract pays gas for on their behalf. This was inspired by Web2 services. It was inspired by the good work of the fellows in the Fuel VM. They don't have this. They don't have this kind of economic protocol, but they have other things that inspire me to come up with the economic protocol. One of which is predicate, which I think is a very fascinating concept and one that indeed most likely we will explore sooner or later. Predicate allows basically for automated validation logic on transaction that can be deployed on smart contracts. There is also another thing about the economic protocol. We are probably at the moment in the specification, we are devolving part of the gas spent by the smart contract or to the intercontract calls. What this means is that if I have contract A that calls contract B, then contract B also earns money if contract A earns money. And this allows for B2B, for an entire B2B chain of monetizable services. This is particularly important, for instance, with oracles. So if you have an oracle, then normally a user will never call an oracle by itself, but the oracle is used by a lot of different smart contracts to see the price or to know the price of certain assets. So the oracle can mature money. So this would have not been in Mainnet, and it would have been extremely difficult to introduce once Mainnet is out. So the fact that we have Mainnet right now in a completely different configuration, this gives us certain characteristics and certain novelties that we can push out together with the rest of the network. And overall, I think that a lot of the previous work done at the very beginning of Dusk, research-wise, had to be redone formally to prove for the security of this protocol, rather than basically just going with best case scenarios. Let me put it that way.
So we're in a better position than we would have been.
We are in an incredible position compared to even 2 years ago.
And even the stack itself has become much more, of the same sort. For instance, with the node transition as well to Rust.
Indeed.
It simplified the code base a lot as well. So performance-wise, it's a lot better. Code-wise, it's a lot better, and the security assumptions that we work under are a lot better now, or validated. Let's put it like that.
For me, this sounds like a great note to end on. So if there isn't anything else, I think we can wrap things up. Guys, do you have anything else you want to add? And I don't see any questions or people seeming to want to unmute themselves.
There was one question in chat about what. Yeah, not sure if this was answered already, but what was the turning point in the process that made you say now we're ready for Mainnet?
Good question.
I think it was when I saw the first contracts on Piecrust. When I saw their outline, when I saw them running the performance, then I thought, okay, I think that this is solid work, and I think we need to plan for this. We had different kind of components. So we sat down, all the technology department and research. We sat down and we basically just created the plan. And it took a while to, just commit to everything, to be extra sure, to make extra sure that all the different components included the right subcomponents, and those were estimated properly in terms of timelines in order for us to commit to something. I'm gonna go on and say that there is a little bit of a buffer there to make sure that if we are going to stumble upon something, we're not going to be late or delaying. At the same time, it is also true that if the security assessment or the audits are going to highlight certain major flaws, then we will need to get back to the drawing board. But the most important thing is to keep I feel that is to keep the community involved, to keep the community informed, and to communicate early on about any of our findings. At the moment, we are on time. Or at least that is the feeling that I have. Even if possible, even slightly, ahead of schedule in some cases. But there is still a little bit of uncertainty to be tackled, but not much. And so our timelines, at some point, we decided that they were good enough to share, and we did so. So that right now the whole community can see.
And some questions have just come in from Arendam. The first one is, third-party smart contracts will come after mainnet launch is done? ?
That is correct, yes.
And the second question, if for a large staker, is it more beneficial to be selected as a block generator than what about a small staker?
Well, if we are going with my proposition, with the idea that I had, then there is not going to be any difference. So small stake, large stake, they will have the same probability of being extracted. Their reward is obviously going to be proportional to how much they staked. That is actually quite normal. I mean, if I am investing $1 million in a stock, then if the investment goes up, then 10%, then essentially I will have profited 100K. If I have a much lesser amount of stocks, instead of $1 million, I have 10,000. 10% essentially will give me 1,000. It's as simple as that. If instead we keep our current configuration, this means basically that the smaller stake is going to be extracted to become a block generator much more seldom, much less often, and therefore will accrue an amount of Dusk that is proportionally lower than a bigger stake.
All right, I think that is it.
One last thing about the third-party smart contract, just as a clarification, because I think it is due. What we are on Mainnet, we are not going to let or the deployment of third-party smart contract is not going to be implemented, but third-party smart contracts can or will be already there. Everything is on Dusk is a smart contract. I don't want to give the idea that we are, pulling a Cardano on our own community by saying, smart contracts will come afterwards. No, smart contracts are already here. The only thing that we are not going to, implement is the deployment system. And the reason for that is basically that we want to have a couple of tools, and we want to assess the security of the network extra hard before being able to open the gates to any kind of smart contract developer.
Yeah, I think that one of the downsides of opening it up now as well would be that we would be spending a lot of time on support, which is something that sort of collides with the idea of releasing quickly. So it's a trade-off there.
Yes, we will still provide a lot of support, but we are going to provide support on tools and smart contracts and operations that the network will allow, which in fact is those that we have been that we are very comfortable with, and then we will slowly transition toward opening up also deployment for third-party smart contracts too.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I don't think there are any more questions. And if there are, we will have more of these, and we'll be putting out content and stuff that aims to answer questions as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I hope that was useful. I found it very interesting. It was nice to have you guys kind of bring the roadmap to life, I suppose, and to go beyond the roadmap. So yeah,
awesome. Thank you for having hosted, and a big thank you also to the community for having kept up with us. The roadmap is definitely a turning point for us, as is for the community, I think. So we are very excited here on out to let the community know how well we are doing, and to keep everybody up to speed, and hopefully also being able to release everything according to the plan. We will certainly try our best.
All right, excellent. Thank you, guys. Let's end the recording here, and we will wrap up.